Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yes, I was muted. Good evening. How are we today? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are we today? Did you guys have a good weekend? What did I do? Oh, I worked all weekend. I'm dropping videos for my peeps. Try, it's I went on the ultimate rabbit hole true crime just rabbit hole plunge this weekend completely. Would go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. I still have things set up here as, oh, I didn't get to that one yet. I still got to do that one. The the sad part is that all the stuff that I'm getting to is true crime, right? Which means our world is just getting worse and worse as we go. But I don't know. I, I like to think I live a boring life, and true crime makes me feel more normal. And that's why I watch it. Also, I think the reason we all watch it is because we just can't figure out why people think the way they think, right? Why do people do the things that they do? That's the biggest question in it all. Why would you do that? Why did you do that? How could you do that? Crime will never stop. That's right. So, anyway, tonight is going to be different than any other one I've ever done because it's kind of a feel good story, kind of. I mean, it happened so long ago. We are actually going back in time tonight, and what's happening, just what started happening last week, it's been happening in the background for a very long time, but it really came to light last week over in Oregon, is that they could be solving something that happened in 1958. Is it not crazy? And we could be witnessing it. That's what's so neat about it all. All right. So let's get to this first clip.
Breaking news, decades in the making. A car believed to belong to the Martin family pulled up from the Columbia River just moments ago. The Martin family missing since 1958, one of Oregon's greatest mysteries.
See, this is how I start down rabbit holes. I'll start with one case and then I'll find something else, and it's like, whoa, what happened here? This is amazing, you guys. Look at this. A 1958 cold case has just been solved this week.
Just incredible to watch this unfold because you've been following this with us, this big effort for a day and a half now live on the air. So let's bring in Jeff Gianola, who is at the command center once again right now. In fact, Jeff has special access connected to his years of intense coverage on this case. Jeff, tell us more.
Well, I'm witnessing something pretty incredible. They are just now loading the Martin car onto a flatbed truck. What's left of the presumed to be the Martin car onto a flatbed truck that has a blue tarp stretched out on the back bed to preserve any kind of evidence. And then just moments ago, I want to show you this video. Moments ago, the car was pulled out from the bottom of Cascade Locks, and this was a very slow process. They didn't want anything to fall apart on the car, and they wanted to preserve all evidence if they could, and then it submerged, and this was our first look at the car. And you can see most of the body of the car was missing. The main structure of the car, the undercarriage, some of the engine compartment, the axles with all four tires, they're intact. And here's where we need to be respectful. We don't know if there are fragments of human bones in this car. And so I'm trying to be very respectful. I'm about 50 yards away from where they're now loading the car. There's what's left of the car, the remains of the car, strapping it onto the flatbed truck. And this is sort of a very solemn moment. I think all the investigators who've been involved with this are kind of quietly taking pictures, looking. They're being very respectful of what's going on. Once again, you don't know what kind of evidence is in this car. So they're treating this very respectfully, very professionally, and they're just in the process of strapping the car down onto the flatbed truck. This has been quite an ordeal. The barge barge arrived here yesterday, the crane with the crane on it around 12:30. There was an attempt yesterday to pull the car up, but it was just stuck in the debris and the mud. Early this morning, divers with the salvage company out of Portland associated with the crane, they were working feverishly to clear the mud and debris and the rocks, things that were sucking the car down like a vacuum onto the floor of the locks. And they felt they had cleared enough of it away. Why this afternoon, they started the effort to pull the car up, the remains of the car. You know, this is such an important clue, such an important piece of evidence in the disappearance of the Martin family. Let's take a look, and remember that this is a tragedy. Let's take a look at a snapshot of the Martin family if we can. There was Ken Martin, the father, Barbara Martin, the mother. They're sitting on their living room couch here. The three daughters, Barbie, named after Mom Barbara, Virginia, and Sue. And then the older son, Don Martin. Don was in his 20s in the Navy, living in New York when the family disappeared. Don later went on to marry, moved to Hawaii, had a family. And I've corresponded with Don's children over the years of my covering this. And the sad tragedy is here, they knew nothing about their grandparents or their aunts. Their father didn't talk about it, and maybe it was too painful for them. And when I was doing my investigations into this story, you know, dating back years ago, it was the first they heard about what happened to their grandparents and their aunts. And my heart really went out to them about that. You know, you think about the coverage we've had on this story over the years, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the great Ann Sullivan, who was a reporter for the Oregonian for more than 52 years. And she covered this from day one and constantly kept readers updated throughout Oregon on what was going on. And she did some pioneering work in the mystery of the Martin family. And I do want to salute Ann Sullivan. She's no longer with us, but I wonder what Ann would think this day. They're starting to cover up the remains of the car, the wreckage of the car, with a blue tarp. Once again, I can't stress enough that we just don't know what kind of evidence is in the car. You know, you may look at this and say, you know, there's not much there, but I can see from my vantage point, there's a back seat that's, you know, tattered and torn. But what's in that seat? They're going to go over there. Are there maybe some fragments of human bone? Is there possibly other kind of evidence? There were two theories into the disappearance of the Martin family. The very first theory, days after they disappeared, the Hood River sheriff saw tracks in the gravel. This was not a paved lot then. It was a gravel lot. It was easy to back your car up into the locks accidentally. And he felt that the Ken Martin may have accidentally backed into the locks. The Multnomah County Detective Walter Graven, he investigated the case, and when they didn't find the car here at Cascade Locks initially, he came up with some theories. There was some pretty strong circumstantial evidence that this could lead, you know, that Martins were victims of foul play. He felt very strongly about that. This case haunted him for the rest of his career. And he always said his last entry in his detective book will be solved when they find the vehicle with the bodies inside. Well, I can tell you from my vantage point, I'm not seeing any full skeletal remains or anything like that, but we just don't know what kind of fragments could be in what's left of this car. And we need to be very, very respectful of that. It's kind of a very somber scene down here, very quiet. Everything's quiet. The crane has stopped working, and you just think you'd never, see this day in a mystery that's more than 66 years old. The mystery of the Martin family. They're pretty convinced this is the car. And let me tell you, local diver Archer Mayo is the one who discovered this car, and it was buried under tons of debris. And he spent a long time uncovering. This is his underwater video that he took, and you can see the amount of debris on this car. He was able, during one of his dives, to get a partial plate. And back in the 50s, Multnomah County, you had your own metal registration tags. And he had a picture of that he took. And that's how they were able to identify this, or pretty certainly that this was the Martin car. Now, Archer also said he felt this car was pretty intact. But remember, this car is upside down in the water. That's the way it came up. And that's what Archer saw when he was down there. So the undercarriage of the car is pretty intact when you look at it. The axles are there, the wheels are there, the hubcaps are on. It's the rest of the car. Most of the rest of the car is missing. The side, the doors, the thing, those are missing. And we have no idea. Are they still underwater? Is there going to be an effort to retrieve those? I don't know. Will they go down and try to dredge and maybe see if they can find any evidence? I don't know. If the divers are here, that's a question I'll have for the sheriff. I know the sheriff, Matt, is going to, Hood River Sheriff is going to have a briefing, I think, once this scene wraps up here. But this is a pretty historic afternoon here, because this Martin family mystery was probably one of the both baffling mysteries in Oregon history. And at the time the Martins disappeared in 1958, this was the largest manhunt in Oregon history ever attempted. And what happened was the days turned into weeks, the weeks turned into months. There were theories and conjecture, but never any hard evidence. The bodies of two of the Martin girls, Virginia and Sue, wash up downriver 5 months after the Martins disappear. And they thought, well, maybe, that'll lead to some answers. It really never did. It just added to the mystery. And pretty soon the months turned into years, that turned into decades. And I think almost everyone thought, we'll never know. The Columbia River will keep that mystery forever. Well, it looks like the Columbia River gave up part of that mystery. And will any evidence that they're able to discern from this wreckage of the car, will that lead to answers? And that's what we don't know, and we may not know that for quite a while. But a big chapter has come to the end. Some new chapters open in the investigation into the disappearance of the Martins, as we take a live look as they continue to strap down the wreckage on the back of this flatbed truck.
Jeff, you've done such an incredible job, as I mentioned, a day and a half of really giving us this intense play-by-play of this latest new lead in this case, but also as we reflect on the intense investigative work that you've done on the mystery behind what happened to the Martin family, who they were, the many theories.
Really? Really? Thank you. Thank you, Nanya. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for those emojis. Yes, I was muted. Thank you, Laura. Um, so we're going to get into this documentary that this channel has done, and I'm going to do it in bits and pieces because I don't want them to copyright me. but they might copyright strike me anyway. We'll try it. But the stuff that he's put together is so informative. It's just I couldn't help but be drawn into this watching what this guy has done on this case. So let's get to the second piece of it.
Wake up, Portland. It's a wonderful day today.
It was another time, a more innocent place. Portland, Oregon, December 1958. Christmas was in the air with holiday songs on local radio. And inside their Northeast Portland house, the Martin family made plans to collect Christmas boughs and greenery. They got into their 1954 Ford station wagon and left for a Sunday afternoon trip up the gorge. They were never seen or heard from again. It took a few days for anyone to realize the Martins had vanished. Ken and Barbara Martin had 3 beautiful daughters, Barbara 14, Virginia 12, and Sue 10. Each Christmas, Ken dressed as Santa to the delight of the neighborhood children. Worried relatives soon alerted authorities and the search began, with posters offering a reward. The Martin story captivated the city. The front pages of the Oregonian and the Oregon Journal were filled with news about the family. What could have happened? Where were they? How was the search going? But as days turned into weeks, there was frustration among searchers. 5 different police agencies, no one really in charge, no coordinated effort, few clues. Christmas and the New Year came and went. The Martins were still missing.
So you're talking about a family of actually there was 4 children, but one was like way far. It's kind of odd that he was so much older than the others. But I guess really he's not that much older because the oldest girl was probably a lot closer to his age. Let's see. The next piece we have is getting more into what happened.
Since this is still a cold case, I will not reveal some of the information they shared, but what you're about to see and hear is sensitive. It comes from Detective Graven's confidential reports and his personal notebook on the Martin case. Once the Martins went missing, Multnomah County Sheriff Detective Walter Graven was on the case. We know the Martins stopped for gas at Cascade Locks. Detectives had found a gas receipt dated December 7th, 1958, mailed back to the Martin home. And a waitress said the Martins had stopped for lunch at a cafe in Hood River. But there was one Martin not missing, 28-year-old Donald. Don was in the Navy and had recently moved to New York. And according to Detective Graven's case file, Donald Martin didn't get along well with his parents. There was something else Graven uncovered. Graven's report states a few years earlier, Don Martin had been fired from his job at Meyer & Frank when he was caught taking merchandise. The thefts were over $2,000. He admitted to the thefts. Graven now considered Donald Martin a possible suspect in his family's disappearance, but why? More on that in a moment. Meanwhile, with little to go on, other investigators had a new theory about the Martin case.
I think I missed a piece, but it's not. I think it'll be okay. That was 3. Now we're going into 4.
My investigation takes me to Cascade Locks. We know the Martins stopped for gas here the day they disappeared, but did they vanish here? One theory surrounds the locks themselves and the possibility Ken Martin accidentally drove into the river. As I walk along the locks, it's hard to imagine Ken Martin could accidentally drive into the locks, but this area has changed in 50 years. In 1958, the riverbank went right up to the edge of the locks. It had now been 2 months since the Martins vanished, but Detective Graven was about to get his first big clue. So this person who saw the tracks, did he see tracks literally leading right off the water?
That's what it says in the reports. And paint scrapings on a rock right by the water.
We are standing on a rocky bluff in the Dalles above the Columbia River. In February 1959, 2 months after the Martins vanished, tire tracks leading into the river were found in this exact same spot. And on a rock near the edge of the cliff, paint scrapings matching the Martins' 1954 Ford station wagon. Detective Graven inspected the scene, writing in his report, There were no return marks to show that this particular vehicle returned and apparently was either pushed or driven off this cliff. Detective Graven was now sure this wasn't an accident.
If it did go off air, I think it reinforces the original theory that the family was killed for some reason and the car pushed off to get rid of the evidence.
But if the Martins were the victims of foul play, who did it and why? Detective Graven was now focusing on two ex-cons. The first, a man named Roy Light, was known in the Dalles. He had recently been living near the aluminum plant not far from the cliff where the tire tracks were found. Because this is a cold case, I won't reveal the name of the other ex-con. He may still be alive. According to Detective Graven's report, Roy Light and the unnamed ex-con were together the evening the Martins disappeared. They disappeared from the Dalles shortly after this, whereabouts unknown. Remember, on the day the Martins vanished, a waitress said the family stopped to eat at a Hood River cafe. Well, the cafe owner knew Roy Light and the other ex-con. When interviewed by Detective Graven, he stated Roy Light and the unnamed ex-con were at cafe when Martins were there. They left at approximately the same time. And there's more. Around the same time the Martins vanished, the ex-cons had abandoned a stolen 1951 Chevrolet near Cascade Locks. A stolen gun was later found not far from the car.
Then it was completely coated with the dried blood from whatever they had clubbed. They had clubbed something to death, apparently.
This is the gun. In 1986, photojournalist Tom Sr. interviewed Bonnie Cox. Her husband is the person who found the gun in some bushes near Cascade Locks, and it was obvious it had been used for something sinister.
But covered with the dried blood, all up and down the barrel. It was dried. And after they decided that it hadn't been, it had been used to kill something.
The gun was turned over to the Hood River Sheriff, but never processed as evidence. The gun was later returned to the man who found it, who repaired the damage to the weapon. The ex-cons were never questioned. And then something unexpected. The serial number on the stolen gun was traced to Myron Frank. It was among the sporting good items Don Martin was accused of stealing. It seemed like a strange coincidence.
The gun seems to be at the center of all of it. It sort of ties all these other little events together.
As far as the possibility of it being a homicide, there are just so many coincidences that point that way.
Foul play. Detective Graven had already come to that conclusion, but his personal notebook reflects frustration. He wrote in his notebook, "Even though I can get no cooperation from anyone, there is no murder that cannot be solved." Meanwhile, Don Martin didn't come back to Oregon until March 1959, 3 months after his family went missing. He came to settle the family estate. That spring, the search for the Martins took another unexpected twist.
He didn't come back after they died. 3 months. For 3 months, he was gone.
On May 1st, 1959, almost 5 months after the Martins vanished, a barge was dropping anchor in the Columbia River below the area where the tire tracks were found.
The anchor fouled on something very heavy. And when they pulled the anchor, one of the deckhands had reached down with a pole and struck what he said was definitely metal. At about that time, whatever it was, cleared the anchor, and they never actually saw it.
They didn't see it, but crew members reported they hooked something the size of a car. Just 2 days after the barge hooked the metal object, Portland residents woke to blaring headlines in the paper. The body of Sue Martin had been found in the Camas Slough, identified by her dentist through dental records. Then the next day, workers at Bonneville Dam discovered the body of Virginia Martin. Had the barge anchor hooked the Martin car, causing the bodies to surface? We examined the autopsy report on Virginia Martin. It states she died of probable drowning, no evidence of foul play.
Okay, I want to say one thing really quick. Why didn't they, when that occurred, did they not put it together enough to say, or maybe back then it was just impossible for them to say, you know what, let's go on a dive and let's check this out and see if that car is down there. Because, I mean, it would still be on top of everything. It would be on top of the bottom of the water anyway.
But we also found a report by a Multnomah County identity technician. Russell Bissett took fingerprints and photographed the body. His report on photograph 6 clearly states showing head with hole in head. Other than one poor photocopy, we were unable to find the original autopsy photographs. On May 23, 1959, there was a funeral service for Sue and Virginia Martin. Brother Don missed the memorial, claiming in a newspaper article there was a mix-up on the funeral date. But when he did arrive back to Portland, Don Martin sat down face-to-face with Detective Graven. He told him he suspected foul play. I know of no one who would murder my folks or no reason for it, but I don't see how it could have been an accident. We couldn't find any burial records for Sue or Virginia Martin. We did discover their bodies were cremated at Portland's Riverview Abbey, but their remains went unclaimed for 10 years, sitting on a shelf. We were unable to find out any other information.
Their remains were unclaimed for 10 years. So he says he has them, I guess, cremated, and he left them there. Is that not weird, you guys? You know what else I thought about too? Because of the age of this case, what if, with the difference in ages of him and the girls, what if he was like one of the parents wasn't more than likely, like, I don't know, like maybe one of the parents wasn't his real biological parent and he felt like an outsider. I'm totally speculating. I have no idea. But you know what I mean? It's just, why?
We do know there was a cloud of suspicion that followed Don Martin the rest of his life. According to his children, he told them very little about what happened, gave no details about their grandparents and aunts who went missing that December day 50 years ago.
So he never tells his kids about his mom and dad, how they went missing. He had 3 sisters. They never even knew. I know there's always a reason behind it, right? Let's go to the next video. Did such a great job on this, didn't they?
We have breaking news today. A new lead in a cold case haunting Oregon for decades. Thanks for being here at noon. I'm Todd Unger. The Martin family has been missing since 1958, and now new leads prompting a major underwater search of the Columbia River. KOIN 6 anchor Jeff Gianola is live in Cascade Locks. Jeff, you have been tracking this mystery for nearly 2 decades yourself. Tell us more about the case and what is happening right now.
Latest developments right now. Just moments ago, we have video of this. A barge has come upriver from Portland with a crane on it. And this is what they're going to use to lift a submerged vehicle, a vehicle that a local diver found. And now investigators think this indeed could be the Martins' car, a family of 5 that disappeared 66 years ago while taking a Sunday drive in the Columbia River Gorge. Let me set the scene here where we're at. I'm reporting from Cascade Locks, and I have a map of the scene right now so you can kind of get a feeling of where I'm reporting from. I'm in the media staging area right now. You see in the middle of the map, there's the command center. Because of my work on this case in the past, only KOIN 6, the only media allowed at the command center, and then I'm doing my live reports up at the media center. And then you can see where the car is submerged, and that's where the barge is docked. Right now, it has just lifted the crane moments ago. I want to talk a little bit about the Martin family. We have a snapshot from the mid-1950s, about 3 years before the Martin family disappeared. There's Ken Martin, who is 54, his wife Barbara, 48. They had 3 daughters. They had Virginia, who was 12 years old, Sue, who was 11 years old, and Barbie, who was 14, just about to turn 15. And then the young gentleman on your left in that photo sitting on the couch, that's older son Don Martin, who was in his 20s. He was living in New York. He was in the Navy when the family disappeared. He was somewhat disfranchised from the family a little bit. And so he was living back east when the family disappeared. I want to talk about the car that they may be pulling up from the river. Where were the Martins when they disappeared? This was a 1954 Ford station wagon. It was tan with red trim around the windows, and there's the Oregon license plate with 1959 a registration tag on that car. But that's the plate that the diver has pictures of, that investigators are pretty sure this pinpoints that this could indeed be the car. We talk about that diver. His name is Archer Mayo. And Archer shared some video with us that I now want to share with you on his dive. He is.
By the way, I have gone to look for Archer's YouTube page. He does have one, but he doesn't have any of the footage of this put up. I was hoping he would.
He's been searching for this car for 7 years. He's always believed that the car was here at Cascade Locks in an area known as the Pit. That's a deeper hole right before the locks. The car was covered with rock and debris. He's been clearing that off. We have no idea how long it's going to take for that crane to lift this car out of the water. Now, moments ago, I talked with Archer and I asked him, what was it like when you first saw this car underwater? And here's what he had to tell me.
As I went further on it, I realized, oh my gosh, this is the car. This is a 54 wagon.
So that's Archer Mayo telling me about what it was like to discover that car, what it was like when he saw that. This has been a 7-year quest for him. Absolutely incredible. He then alerted authorities. Now, Archer got involved in the Martin case because I've been covering this for almost 30 years now. And when he saw my report on the 50th anniversary of the disappearance back in 2008, he got interested in this. He started researching it. And that's when he felt that the car was here at Cascade Locks. Here's what he had to tell me about that.
I'm really happy that you're here and that you've done the work you've done, because I know about it because of you. And I really respect that you used your position to keep the message alive. And when I heard about this, I'm like, oh, I should pick that up. I've got the skills to do this.
So hats off to Archer Mayo, the diver who found this car. A lot of praise goes to him, and that's why we are here right now. Let me set the scene again. Behind my right-hand shoulder, you can see the command post set up with the crane now lifted in the background. That crane arriving just about a half hour ago. This could be an important clue, a key piece of evidence in solving the Martin family mystery, the family that disappeared in the Columbia River Gorge more than 66 years ago. There's a lot of theories on why they disappeared. The Hood River Sheriff, a few days after they disappeared, saw tire tracks here, which was then a gravel parking lot leading into the water. He felt Ken Martin had accidentally backed into the locks. But there was some other circumstantial evidence that a Multnomah County detective uncovered. He felt this was foul play. Will we ever know? We don't know until we pull up that car to verify it is actually the Martin car. And there's a good possibility there may be some human remains in that car. 5 months after the Martins went missing, fishermen here at the locks saw 2 bodies floating in the locks. 2 days later, they were found downriver. Virginia Martin and Sue Martin. There are 3 Martins still missing. Father, Ken, mother, Barbara, and daughter, Barbie. Are they entombed in that Martin car? So the sheriff investigators are taking a lot of care in bringing this car up. They want to preserve any kind of evidence. And they also want to be very respectful if there are human remains in that car. We heard from the sheriff at the top of the newscast. He also told us they are prepared with special forensic investigators if there are human remains in that car. We don't know. So that's the scene here, Todd. This is a very big news story. Will a 66-year-old Oregon mystery, perhaps one of the biggest mysteries in Oregon's history, at least a puzzle piece of that mystery be solved with the recovery of this vehicle. And we are sticking with this story all through the afternoon into the evening. And I'll remain here on the scene reporting any new developments, Todd. But for now, I'm going to send it back to you because I want to make my way back down to the command center to learn what the latest is on the crane and the efforts to lift that car out of the water.
I I was thinking that too, Patty. I guess like obviously at this point, all you're going to retrieve are bones, but the way he said that he's fixing to get into explaining. The diver's going to explain how deep it was into the water in a minute here, which will help us understand exactly why probably they only pulled out the underneath carriage of the vehicle. Oh, hang on. I'm pulling up the next video. I just pulled up the wrong one. Is this the same one we just watched? Such a great job on this, didn't they? It is.
We have breaking news today. A new lead in a cold case haunting Oregon for decades. Thanks for being here at noon. I'm Todd Unger.
Family disappeared
the Martin family
more than
has been
60
missing since
years ago after going on a drive near Hood River. Our Jeff Gianola has been poring over this case for decades. And when a diver reached out with a tip that he may have found that missing car submerged in the Columbia, he got in touch. Jeff walks us through the moments that diver made this shocking discovery.
I'm sitting with Archer Mayo. He is the diver who found what is now believed to be the Martin car at Cascade Locks under the cold water of the locks, along with a lot of debris. And you took video of your dives, but the water is rather murky. But incredibly, Archer, you made a map of what this looks like underwater in the Martin car. Can you describe what we're seeing here?
Right. So this is the width of the canal is this way. So it's 90 feet across. And the current would be moving downriver going this way. This piece represents how high the current, the surface is now. So this is 40 feet above what we're calling this is the pit. Now, this is a forgotten feature of the Cascade Locks.
And you focused your search there for the last 7 years. You said very firmly, that's where I'll find the Martin car.
Once I knew about this, Jeff, that's the thing. So
really quickly, I want to show you the locks. Because I was confused about this. As we're watching all this and I hear them talk about the locks, I'm trying to understand exactly what the locks were all about. And apparently in this area, there's a lot of rapids. And so the boats were having trouble getting through. So in 1896, the navigational canal and locks at the side of the rapids were completed, and the modern day Cascade Locks were born. So this picture that I am showing you guys is obviously an older photo. I want to show you this because when the diver starts to talk about the locks, what he's describing and being able to see this right here and all of his images that he had will help us understand this better. See, there's a lock there and a lock down there.
And could that mystery soon be revealed here at Cascade Locks this morning? I'm joined by Deputy Pete Hughes from the Hood River County.
Over here, and I realized that all of the pit was concrete on the bottom except this one spot. And actually, it looked like this. When I got to it,
that was the amount of debris you encountered?
This is the amount of debris that's still mostly in there. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, well, is this a 5-foot depression? Is this to stop? Because the doors used to open and close here. And I thought, well, maybe that depression is just to keep logs from jamming the doors. And then I took a fiberglass rod, 15 feet long, and I started hammering it down the back of this pit here. And it just kept going and going. And I couldn't hammer anymore. And I'm like, it's at least 15 feet deep. So I went back to the Oregon Historical Society where they have all the photographs of building the canal. And I found, amazingly, a perfect side picture of this pit feature. And this pit feature is partially, it's to absorb this stone 13-foot by 20-foot tall wall, absorb the force of the doors when it was closed. The whole force of the river was held back by these doors. And the ground around it isn't strong enough, so they had to kind of create this. This is a new feature for a canal that I've ever known.
Well, the most important thing here is you have a model of what could be the Martin car. Tell us about what this model represents here.
So this is its position and relative angle. This is how I found it. So I started digging. I figured out the fisherman, Ellery Colby. He saw the girls floating about 30 feet from the bank when they floated out in 1959.
This was about 5 months after the Martins went missing. He spotted 2 bodies floating.
Yeah, he was actually standing right here. He was standing literally right here and saw the bodies 30 feet off the shore. And so, you know, this is a huge pit. The car could have been anywhere in it, but I used that metric that he gave, 30 feet. And I thought, well, if they came out of the car while the car was rolling in the spring runoff, then my best shot is to just go straight at that 30-foot line.
And this is a representation of how that car is sitting right now.
Right now, that's right.
So it's at a 45.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's basically about, you know, it's upside down and it's at an angle. And then this is actually what the car looks like. It's a 1954 Ford that I painted to match the Martin's car. So on it so far, what I've seen is, remember this, when I dig, I did not empty out the whole pit. It's mostly still full. I just wanted to represent where the car is. So I've dug a big basin out here, got down, saw the axle, put a buoy on the axle for the diver, seen the gas tank, seen the bumper, and actually, interestingly, the tailgate is open. So that means the tailgate is showing right here. And that showed me the color of the car. And it also said Ford-O-Matic. I got the license plate little part off of it.
And it was enough information when you gave that to investigators, they say that pretty much matches the exact vehicle the Martins were driving.
That's right. It's a pretty unusual car because, you know, in this car, you can see the rear wheels are actually embedded in the body of the car. When that means the axle is narrower than the front. And so it's a pretty narrow axle for a big car. So once I measured that, the second day I went down there, I took a measuring tape and went.
That reminds me of the truckster from Vacation.
From the center to the center, and it matched exactly. And then I knew, and then when I saw the body color and the fact that it had a tailgate, right? That means it's a wagon. And then I got the license plate off that it said it was last registered in 1958. I mean, basically, that's like 3 cherries on the slot machine for me.
So the problem right now, the first day's search finally ended because they said it seems like the mud was a little too much for them to pull the car out without them fearing that it might fall apart. So there's a lot of mud and debris surrounding the car.
Right, absolutely. First, there's the car sitting in that for 70 years. And so the pressure of that, plus, remember, there's been other floods. There's 64, there's 65. There was one in the mid-70s, and the big one was 1996. In 1996, there was a lot of landslide activity. So this part of the canal got a lot of softball size and got stones, river stones.
My hat's off to you, Archer, because without your discovery, this would have remained a mystery. And now we're on the verge, possibly, of solving a big key piece of evidence.
See how deep it is? Like, I don't know how on earth they could get the body of the car out.
My hat's off to you, Archer, because without your discovery, this would have remained a mystery. And now we're on the verge, possibly, of solving a big key piece of evidence in the disappearance of the Martin family. I really congratulate you for 7 years of your hard work on this and your dedication to finding the Martin family.
Yeah, that means a lot coming from you because I know about this mystery because of you, Jeff.
Take a look at this. After half a century of waiting, investigators finally hauled part of a car from the Columbia River today. This underwater find may just hold the answers to the long unsolved mystery of what happened to a Portland family that vanished more than 50 years ago. Good evening, I'm Anthony Costura, and this is The 10. Those crews finally hauled that car onto a truck today, kicking off a new chapter in this decades-old mystery. We've got team coverage tonight. Our Ariel Yakabazi breaks down what's next for the car and this investigation. First, though, our own Jeff Gianola, who's followed this case for years, brings the latest from the scene of the salvage operation there in Cascade Locks.
I'm Jeff Gianola reporting from Cascade Locks, where a key piece of possible evidence emerges in the case of the missing Martin family. But another piece remains firmly submerged on the bottom of the river. The anticipation came to an end at 3:40 in the afternoon Friday. The crane pulling up what remained of the vehicle, thought to be the 1954 station wagon the Martins vanished in 66 years ago. But what surfaced was just an undercarriage, axle, wheels, and part of the engine. Hood River Sheriff Matt English, who led the recovery effort, was disappointed but not surprised.
This is something that we kind of anticipated could be a reality. It's been in there for 66 years. And so, it's really rusty and really falling apart. And so I think they'll do more of a debrief, with the professionals. But it sounded like, whatever is left there is full of rocks.
The sheriff says he's not sure if divers will look for evidence still submerged with the shell of the car.
I think everybody wanted to see an entire car come up.
When the Martins first vanished, Multnomah County Detective Walter Graven took up the case. Frustrated, it was never solved. His grandson Greg and daughter Gloria were on hand for the recovery effort.
It was such a shock to hear that they pretty much think they found the car. So many emotions. I just feel my dad's spirit here today, and I'm so happy, but very emotional.
He took pride in wanting to find the answers. That's carried through to third generations now, from my dad to me, is that we are the last voice for a family. We are a last voice to find out what the results are of what happened to them and to give answers to the family.
The wreckage was covered and hauled away to a secure location to begin the next phase of the investigation, combing through what's left for clues and evidence. And during the recovery effort, a bald eagle flying above it all, perhaps the spirit of the Martin family rising above their mysterious tragedy. So now the work
I was kind of thinking it was the detective, the original detective on the case, because he was so into it.
Begins to go through that wreckage looking for any clues or evidence. And if investigators find anything, we'll be the first to let you know. Reporting from Cascade Locks, Jeff Gianola.
Just incredible reporting from Jeff. And after a grueling week, investigators finally managed to pull the decades-old vehicle from the waters you just saw. Our Aro Yakabazi now explains the next steps.
Well, that massive crane has finally been put away, and all crews have finally gone home after days of investigation here at the Cascade Locks. Hood River County Sheriff Matt English and his officials are now getting to the nitty-gritty, trying to figure out if that car, one of the cars found here in the deep, dark depths of the Columbia River, actually belonged to the Martin family.
It is amazing. If they're able to find anything and piece it together all these years later, it is incredibly amazing. And you just think about water currents and everything else. And I guess if it had not been for that being in a lock area, it would have been gone or moved by now, further down the river, and they may never have found it. It's just really cool to me. I think it's really cool. All right, let's get into this next piece.
At the moment, this massive crane removed what could be the Martin family vehicle, or at least most of it. Hood River County Sheriff Matt English tells us they have the main parts, including the engine, which could make for a positive identification. But he says he's staying cautiously optimistic as this investigation continues.
They're going to take that vehicle back to our secure facility. They hope to start processing a bit tonight. Look for the identifying information that we had from the files. And then go from there. Honestly, there's a probability that we may never know.
We also checked in with Archer Mayo, the local diver who discovered the car back in November after spending 7 years searching for it. He says this week and today's excavation have been emotional.
I'm so excited to see how many people are interested in this now, because I've had this virus for quite a while, and to now see people really responding to the Martin mystery and the family and the compelling narratives of this, and to bring it to a head has been super great.
Mayo says he's hoping to help in the investigation in any way he can to help bring closure to this decades-old case.
If I were that guy, that diver they were just talking to, I would be down there on Saturday morning or this weekend. I would have already been down there trying to say, okay, now that they pulled up that piece, what did they leave down there? And can I get into anything, or can I take pictures, at least something? Because it just sounds to me like They're like, okay, we pulled it up. And it doesn't sound like, law enforcement has done much else. I could be wrong. I'm just kind of like, it seems like they're leaving some stuff out here, but that may be because it's an investigation.
Sheriff English says over the next couple of days, he's hoping to get more answers to this decades-long case. And that could mean getting back into the icy waters of the Columbia to gather more evidence.
Well, yeah, the sheriff needs to get his butt in the water now. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Don't stop here. You've pulled the base of the car out. Now you can get to the inside of the vehicle, or you could get to the portion where the father and mother and the older sister would be. You can't stop here. Let Jeff go back, or let that guy go back down there and search some more, or whatever it is, Isn't that just, I just thought this was so interesting. And I thought that you guys, I said, I know my subs, I know my OGs are going to love this because it's so cool. And what if, oh gosh, of course, he's no longer with us. What if they figure it out that he did that to his family? Now his children, and I wonder what I'm speaking of the oldest son, by the way, happened with his children saying, yeah, we want to talk to you. And then all of a sudden, no, they don't. That's just insane. This is another piece to it. Here we go.
Thanks for joining us on AM Extra. We're following breaking news this morning, a new lead in a decades-old cold case prompting an underwater search of the Columbia River.
The Hood River County Sheriff's Office recently receiving a tip that the car has been found. That car could be connected to the 1958 disappearance of the Martin family, including a father, mother, and their 3 daughters. It's a mystery that has haunted the Portland metro area for decades. And KOIN 6 anchor Jeff Gianola joining us live in Cascade Locks. Jeff, you have covered this story, the Martin family mystery, for more than 20 years, and today there could be a huge break in this case.
I'm reporting from Cascade Locks, Emily and Travis, and KOIN 6, the first to break this story early this morning. This whole area has been blocked off. There's a command center set up by the Hood River Sheriff's Department, and in the next hour, we're expecting a barge arrive with a crane after a local diver found a car submerged in the water that matches the description of the Martin car that disappeared 66 years ago. What was the timeline? Who were the Martins? Take a look at this. Sunday, December 7th, 1958. Ken and Barbara Martin, along with their 3 daughters, 14-year-old Barbara, 12-year-old Virginia, and 10-year-old Sue, take a drive up the Columbia River Gorge. They left their Northeast Portland home in the family's 1954 Ford station wagon around 1 p.m. We know they got gas at Cascade Locks about an hour later, based on a receipt later mailed to their home. A waitress claims the Martins ate a late lunch at a Hood River cafe. The waitress and other witnesses say they saw the Martins then take off, headed back towards Portland. When they didn't return, friends called police. But no one agency really took charge of the case. Then a few days later, a clue is discovered. The Hood River Sheriff claimed the Martins' car must have accidentally plunged into Cascade Locks while backing up in the parking lot. He based his theory on a fresh set of tire tracks. Well, despite discerning divers at the locks at the time, no car was found. The case of the missing Martins was growing cold, like the waters of the Columbia River. Did the Martins stop at the locks on their way back home, and why? It would have been close to dark at the time. May 1959, 5 months after the Martin family went missing, fishermen at Cascade Locks report 2 objects that look like bodies floating through the locks. A few days later, the bodies of Sue and Virginia Martin are recovered downriver. Weeks drag into months, months into years. And while there are plenty of theories on what could have happened to the Martins, over the last few decades, no other evidence or clues have surfaced in the search. But there was one Martin who was not missing. Older son Don was in the Navy living back east. He had been estranged from his family. He didn't come back for the search effort, but months later, when he did come back to Portland, he told a detective, "I know of no one who would murder my folks or no reason for it, but I don't see how it could have been an accident." There was a memorial service for Sue in Virginia, but the bodies of Ken Martin, his wife, and daughter Barbara have never surfaced. Are they trapped inside the family car in the waters of the Columbia at Cascade Locks? And could that mystery soon be revealed?
I want to read something to you guys that they were talking about. The diver who helped find it said that when they were out there pulling it up, he was standing next to the sheriff and they were like holding their breath and they had binoculars. And when they pulled up the piece of black twisted metal, he said, I was so crestfallen when it came up like that. I needed to find my people and I needed to get out of there. But it says that, okay, obviously they didn't find any human remains. And he said that, obviously it's not going to come out all tied up in a bow like it came out of the showroom. But the reality is the river has forever been our sustainer and our competitor. The river is a bit of a complication to things. So Mayo said that a few factors could have contributed to the car's cabin separating from the chassis. For one, the 1950s car was built before manufacturers galvanized the steel used in auto manufacturing. He said without that, it wasn't uncommon for cars to rust before they got to like 100,000 miles. And already cars from that period weren't meant to last, he said. And now you're putting it into this crazy environment. He added that the sediment encasing the car was so dense when he found it that it was like concrete, creating another obstacle. So the car's literally like sitting in this mud, almost cradled in this mud like concrete. But Mayo said he doesn't hold any ill will towards the sheriff's office, who said played their best cards for what they understood, and he remains hopeful that the cabin and any evidence inside can still be recovered. Had half the body of the car come up, that would have been worse because the rest of the pieces would have been scattered. The fact is it's just running gear. The engines, the frame got all pulled off exactly leads me to believe that there's an intact vessel with the evidence that still sits in it down there. But the efforts to recover the rest of the car are still uncertain right now. The sheriff's spokesperson said that the plans have not been determined yet on a possible salvage operation. I can imagine, though, that there are plenty of people out there who are into diving who are now going to be out in this area, like going crazy. It's going to be like a party for them out there because this is a lot of nowadays. I mean, you guys, we've seen it on YouTube. These people that are out searching for these mysterious things. Maybe Josh Cantu will get into it. That would be cool if he got it on his channel too. But I give all props to this Archer guy. I mean, he's been working for 7 years. I'd love to see him team up with somebody like a bigger group and let them assist him and let him direct what needs to be done or what have you. All right, we're still not done. We've still got part 8 through 10 left. So hang on just a moment. Wait, no, I think we watched this one already.
At the moments, this massive crane removed
what
the Columbia be revealed.
Yeah, that was the one we just watched. I keep doing that. Okay, hang on. We got 9 and 10 left. As we're watching all this and I hear them talk about the locks, I'm trying to understand exactly what the locks were all about. And apparently in this area, there's a lot of rapids. And so the boats were having trouble getting through. So in 1896, the navigational canal and locks at the side of the rapids were completed, and the modern day Cascade locks were born. So this picture that I am showing you guys is obviously an older photo. I want to show you this because when the diver starts to talk about the locks, what he's describing and being able to see this right here and all of his images that he had will help us understand this better. See, there's a lock there and a lock down there.
And could that mystery soon be revealed here at Cascade Locks this morning? I'm joined by Deputy Pete Hughes from the Hood River County Sheriff's Department. And Pete, set the scene for us today. We've got a command post set up down there. The barge is supposed to arrive probably in the next hour and a half or so. What's happening here exactly?
Yes, we'll have a barge with a crane and a dive team that's going to go down and attempt to get multiple vehicles out. But the most, obviously, the important one today is most likely the Martin family vehicle.
Now, this was an independent diver who discovered this vehicle. And after he told investigators what he discovered, he had enough evidence where they believe there's a pretty good likelihood this could be the Martin car.
Yeah, correct. He had a part of the plate and some emblems that really matched the year specifically to that vehicle.
I wonder how much it cost them to do something like that. And I know that the cost of these types of things are what really hold the investigators back from doing what they really want to do.
So we're fairly certain that we're dealing with the same vehicle.
They blocked this whole area off down here, and the investigator told me they're treating this as a crime scene. Now, that's because they take the worst case scenario and they work backwards from there.
Correct. Yeah, we don't know, and we're going in with the mindset of not having any preconceived ideas about what happened. So we'll have the crime lab, we'll have detectives, and they'll be investigating this just like they would investigate any unknown case at this point.
This is pretty incredible to think that a family that disappeared 66 years ago, more than 66 years ago, there may be some clues involved. And there's really, Pete, the possibility that there could be some human remains within the car.
Certainly possible. We don't know what we're going to find. The vehicle's encased in debris and mud. So absolutely possible.
Okay, Pete Hughes from the Deputy Pete Hughes from the Hood River County Sheriff. Thank you. I know we'll be talking to you throughout the day, Pete. Thank you very much. Thank you. So that's the situation right here. The barge is on its way. The investigation will be full blown here within the next few hours. Will an important part in one of the most baffling mysteries in Oregon history soon be solved? The disappearance of the Martin family more than 66 years ago. I'm going to remain on the scene. I'll be reporting back to you within the next half hour or so, Emily and Travis, but that's the situation right here. We're still the only media out here, but I know after we first broke this story, the Hood River Sheriff did release a news release, and we're expecting a lot more media folks around here within the next hour as well. So I'll remain on the scene. We've got plenty more going on at coin.com.
You know, another thing I was thinking about, the two youngest, the smallest, were the ones that were found. And the oldest daughter, she was an older teenager. So I kind of thought that, okay, so that barge's anchor caught onto the car, moved it around a little bit. I mean, for all we know, it moved it from upside to downside. We don't know exactly how, but it shook the car a little bit, and the smaller bodies went out of the probably broken window areas, and the larger bodies would not have fit out that area. And especially, we have to think, don't they get, I'm not trying to be gross, but after someone passes, don't they expand, right? From the gases, everybody expands, so they're even larger than to begin with, correct? I don't know what it's like in water. I haven't watched a case like this in a really long time. Kathy, I'm sorry to hear about your loss, Kathy. She brought up a really good point, though. She said, maybe the son didn't talk about the oldest son that is the only survivor. He wasn't in the car. He wasn't with them. But the oldest son, maybe he never talked about it or told anybody about it because that's the way he dealt with grief. He didn't want to talk to his kids about something, that sad. I think his children are much older, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, after a while, didn't they ask, or didn't he ever say? I guess you're old enough now where you would understand this. But, it might be that he just wasn't that type of person that liked to talk about that kind of stuff. So everybody's different. But it seems to me that leading towards all of this, they all kind of, did you guys feel like the son is pretty much looking like the one who did this if there was foul play involved? Because that was what I originally thought just by listening to the investigative pieces. Now, with that being said, he may not have. This could be complete speculation. I mean, it is a speculation, but what if it was something as innocent as the dad was backing out in the dark or something and they go over the cliff or something, anything. And it was just a complete accident and this occurred. So it's just it's just craziness. I don't know why I'm so involved in this one. Okay, now this part is really different, but I think I've got some commentary in here, so y'all gotta listen to me talk for a little bit longer. W followed the investigation and recreated the events leading to the disappearance of the Martin family.
Either an accident that perhaps involving another car, which they couldn't control, in light of the fact that the roads had been searched so thoroughly and no signs of such accident had been found, we feel that foul play must be indicated.
Well, I think it might be a possibility that they're somewhere on the old scenic route. As I understand it, they purchased gas at Cascade Locks, and it seems logical that they would take the scenic route home, and they might be somewhere in that area.
I haven't the faintest idea. It's a mystery to all of us here.
Well, I still think that it must be a deep canyon or a river that I hope, whatever it was, that it was a rapid accident.
What's your personal opinion of what happened to the Ken Martin family?
Well, if I knew that, I would be the most popular man in the sheriff's office, but I don't know. Several possibilities. It's accident, most likely, and either underwater or the car went down and over the grade under trees where it can't be seen, or there's a possibility of foul play. But we feel that if there had been foul play, that the car would likely show up, which hasn't been showing up yet. We just don't know. All we do is just keep looking, trying.
And his type of a driver would indicate certainly that he is within a 60 or 70 mile radius of Portland, and possibly, since he was in the Cascade Locks area, that he should be up in there in the Columbia River someplace.
Well, the only thing, knowing Ken and how cautious he was, how careful he was, and his knowledge of the woods, and certainly that he could have found his way out if they got lost or anything like that, I just can't help but to believe that he's in the river or down a canyon, that they still haven't discovered it. I think that he's trapped in the car and the family is with him.
I think there are 5 possibilities as to what has happened to the Martin family. I think the first possibility is that they are in deep water. That's my guess. The second one is that they are in a deep canyon. The third possibility is that they have gone away of their own free will. The fourth possibility is that they have been murdered, and the fifth, that they are being held captive. It has to come in those 5 categories. We have had suggestions from all over the United States, and we have built a voluminous file of correspondence in the Martin case. This shows some of the hundreds of letters that we have answered with respect to suggestions that we've had in this case.
Good evening. Richard Ross reporting on one of the strangest stories to come across any newsman's desk in recent years. The story, of course, the disappearance of the Ken Martin family. And strange because with all of the investigation in search of a full month, it still leaves unanswered the question, where are the Martins?
School frequently because I teach the same school where they attend. And I saw my sister-in-law at the funeral of a family friend on the day before they disappeared.
At that time, was there any conversation at all about this intended trip on the 7th?
No.
Is it the habit of the Martin family to get Christmas greens at this early season?
Yes, they decorated the outside of their house with lights, and that's probably what they would have been going for.
Probably just for greens and not a tree.
I would imagine so.
Was there any conversation at all in your visit with them on Thanksgiving that might indicate any personal conflict in the family?
Oh, no.
You would say that they are a closely knit
Oh,
family.
yes, a very happy family.
And they love the outdoors.
Yes, and a great deal of time outdoors.
Did Mrs. Martin take part in the hikes?
She was not able to hike it for any great distance of recent months.
And why was that?
She had a leg condition that would have kept her from hiking.
You would assume then that on their trip they would keep pretty much to well-traveled roads.
Yes, I'm sure they would, unless the girls and their father went into the woods a little farther.
When they say they went up the highway, what does that mean?
To me, that would mean Highway 30 up the river. It could to them have meant some other road.
Would it be possible, have they in the past gone up the highway, Highway 30 in this instance, and then crossed over to the Washington side?
I don't know that they ever did that.
They attended the local church, took part of local functions in the area?
Yes.
What were some of the activities that they worked together on?
My brother is a Mason, and the girls were active in Bethel, and they attended many functions at Friendship Lodge. He is a Toastmaster, and she was a Toast mistress. The younger child sang in the church choir, and the parents and the family always attended when she was performing. They were active in PTA at Rose City Park School. Barbara had been a past president of the PTA there. And probably their chief interest was in the Trails Club, and their summer vacations were always spent on Trails Club camping trips. And they had worked many weekends this past summer and fall at the addition to the Trails Club cabin, which is being built near government camp.
What have you and your own family done to check the house to find out any information you might give to the law enforcement officials that might assist?
We checked the bulletin board for notes indicating where they would go. We called the phone numbers of any numbers that were listed on the bulletin board. We checked with their son and any friends and relatives to whom they might have given indication as to where they were going. The luggage is in the house. Their good clothing is in the house so that they didn't intend a trip. There was washing in the machine, which indicated that they intended to return soon. The toothbrushes are in the house. Ken's razor is in the house. Obviously, from the condition of the house, they left it as they used it Sunday morning, intending to be back within a few hours.
Mr.
The only thing missing is they don't tell us really who they're talking to.
Womack, you live across
Womack.
the street and up about 3 houses from the Ken Martin
Okay,
family.
never mind.
I
He's a
understand
neighbor.
on the afternoon of December 7th, the day they were missing, you were out washing your car.
That's right.
And you could observe their driveway.
That's right.
What happened that afternoon?
Well, I was out washing my car about 1 o'clock, and along about, I'd say about 1:30 or so, I observed that their car was in the driveway. And then when I finished washing the car, the car was not there anymore.
What events transpired regarding the youngsters, your youngsters and their youngsters? Understand?
Well, I had to go to the store to get some car wash, and when we returned, my daughter Joyce hollered at Jenna. And at that time, Jenna and Sue were out gathering some friends to come home, and they were about ready to leave to make the trip.
Before they made the trip, they removed the back seat of the station wagon. Is that not right?
That's my understanding.
Why would they do that, Mr. Womack?
So I understand that they took it out so they could put some greens and possibly a Christmas tree if they were going to get one.
So that would be a further indication that that was the purpose of their trip.
That's right.
Your girls played with the Martin children a lot.
Very often. In fact, they are campfire girls.
They were very active in campfire girls.
That's right. That's right. The meeting was held at our house, and Jenna particularly was over there all the time.
There's also a possibility that your daughter might have accompanied them on this trip. Is that
Could have. I mean, she's made many trips with the Martins, and this could be one of them.
Why didn't she go this time?
Well, she was ill. And, of course, that's the reason that she didn't receive an invitation.
Dean, as near as you can tell, what time was it on the 7th that the Martins are here for gasoline?
According to one of our local customers who stopped in at approximately 1 o'clock, or he said it was 1 o'clock, they were in 7 credit card sales afterwards, which could have been anywhere from 3 to 5 o'clock.
While they were here, I understand that the Mrs. Martin, one of the daughters, used the restroom.
Yes, they had difficulty getting in and out of the car because he had parked so close to the pump. That's the reason I could remember.
Any other particular incident?
Do you guys think that older detectives that lived back in this day look at the newer detectives and go, you guys don't even know. You've got it so easy. They probably have like, they're probably like, you don't, very little respect. I don't know. I'm just kind of wondering because I would think that I'd be like, oh, please. Do you know what we had to deal with? Do you know we had to walk to school in the snow? No, I'm just kidding.
Happened while they were here? Would give them any indication of all of what their plans were?
No, none whatsoever. But it's awful hard to remember.
Mm-hmm. Do you recall what direction they traveled when they left the station?
No, I don't. The car was facing east while it was in the station. Well, I remember she had a dark coat on. It seems as though he had rubbers on and was clothed for the outdoors.
How about the girls?
I don't really remember.
In servicing the car, as you would normally do, washing windows and so forth, you notice if they had any greens or anything in the back of the station wagon?
I never noticed. The time of year, there were a lot of people hauling greens and whatnot, Christmas decorations of different kinds, and you just would not pay any particular attention to any one particular car.
Mrs. Goddard, how long have you known the Ken Martin family?
About a dozen years since we moved in this part of town.
During your time of knowing the Martins, how did you know them and through what activities?
Barbara and I belonged to a church group together and ran into each other there and at school functions. And we also belonged to a group of gals who are interested in entering contests.
I understand that Mrs. Martin was quite successful in that degree.
She worked at it and enjoyed it a great deal, and she was successful very often.
In your association with the Martin family, especially with Mrs. Martin, working closely on contests, and undoubtedly you talked lady between lady, was there any indication of any marital difficulty between the Martin family?
Oh, no. I think they seem to be very close and happy, and she certainly, I think, seemed to be going out of her way to put her family first in her activities and her thoughts, and they seem to be very close.
In the neighborhood, how were the Martins thought of?
Well, in a large town, I wouldn't say we were exactly part of their neighborhood, although we're only a couple of blocks away, but among all her friends and group friends that I know of, I would say they were very highly thought of as a very fine family who did their part in all things very actively and interestedly.
Wasn't one of the activities of Mr. Martin about the Christmas time of year, didn't he take a part of a Santa Claus?
I understand he did, and I know I believe he had in church activities at some times in the past also played Santa.
I think that's the lead detective, but I'm not sure.
Well, Walton, working on the Martin case as you have and doing much of the legwork,
Yeah,
what have you found in regard to Mr. Martin's financial record?
Well, we checked with his bank, and his financial situation is very good. He had money in the bank, well over $1,000 in his checking account, and there's been no recent withdrawals. That was what we were checking on mostly, any recent withdrawals. The last checks that came in on that account were on the 25th of November to the Seaboard Market. There
there has been no other checks come into our knowledge. They were notified us that they had it.
You appear then to be in no financial difficulty.
Apparently not. Not a bit.
Mr. Eccles, what kind of an employee was Ken Martin?
Well, Ken was just a very valuable man in our organization. He had a wealth of knowledge of appliances and electrical circuits and the materials that we used, where to get them, and so forth. And just a wonderful man to have as an employee.
The people here felt that he was the kind of man you'd like to work with. There was nothing about his character that would indicate any sort of despondency or anything of that nature.
No, I should say not. Always very pleasant, and everybody in the office was very fond of him.
Is there any truth to the rumor that he was about to be let go from your employ?
No, I've heard that before, and it's absolutely false, ridiculous. In fact, we hadn't actually lost him. I don't know what I'd do without him. I mean, we would never entertained any thoughts like that.
You mentioned that the Ken Martin family used, especially Ken, exercised a great deal of care. Did they use safety belts in their car when they traveled?
I understand they did, that they just religiously fastened the safety belts, everyone in the car. And I have every reason to believe that they had them all fastened when they were on this trip.
Everybody here knows this case right from the start. However, to start in, I would like to recap just a little bit. On December the 7th, the Martin family left Portland to pick up some greenery for their Christmas. The last known place now that we know was Cascade Locks, where they bought 5 gallons of gas. Presumably, they were heading east towards the Mosier, Rowena area. Of course, we haven't the slightest idea if that was whether they changed their mind or where they ended up before anything perhaps that did happen to them. When this search started, the reports came in that they were seen up around the Larch Mountain area. Most of the effort to start was placed in there. Then it moved from there to Rowena, then back over into Clackamas County and parts of Hood River County. There's still nothing has come up, placing them where they actually did reach the forest. When I first started, everybody thought, and perhaps that they still do, that they are in the forest, and they may still be there. There's one thing sure, we don't know where they're at, but we know of a heck of a lot of places where they are not. Everybody, all police agencies, an enormous amount of people have looked in all of the logical places. They are not in the logical places. The next best thing then to do is to try to look into the illogical places. Where could they be? What could have happened to them? Let's look at the car. A 1954 Ford station wagon, operated by the same owner since 1954, a man who takes pride in his automobile, takes good care of it, and expects that automobile to last for approximately 10 years. What kind of a driver was he? The fact that his automobile is to last 10 years, we can assume that he is a good driver. His relatives and his friends tell us that he does not drive with excessive speed. He is very careful. He will not take his car off of the main highways. He will not take them off at least of a graveled road. This man is well equipped to take care of himself out in the woods. There is another thought as to what he could have done, or the reason he bought 5 gallons of gas at Cascade Locks. It being 40 miles from Portland is a nice rest stop. We do know that Mrs. Martin and one of the girls used the restrooms there. He could have possibly bought that gas as an excuse for the use of the restrooms. It is possible that he had made his trip and was also on the way back to Portland. As I stated at the start, we have looked at all the logical places. All of the roads have been run out, have been searched by car, on foot, and by plane. He certainly isn't there. His driving habits would not indicate that he was a reckless type of a person who would carelessly, negligently run over the bank and turning around or some other places. His driving is usually very prudent. That leaves one particular phase that maybe that we have or have not checked out. And I offer these as suggestions only. Perhaps that you're way ahead of me and have already had these things covered. And that is the question of accident, not by himself particularly, but by people who have rear-ended him or an accident ahead of him, and what has happened. Remember, we were saying that there are no signs of accident along the highway. But remember this, that on the start of the search, our efforts were mainly aimed into the forest. By the time that we all realized, perhaps, that something more had taken place, perhaps the evidence of an accident had been obliterated by wind, by rain, by other causes. Ard, maybe you could fill in and perhaps tell us a little bit about his mental condition and his family life, and if there's anybody here that has checked on their last purchase before Cascade Locks and how much gas they bought, and perhaps any of the running around that had been done.
Well, we do know that he bought gasoline from time to time at 60th and Mason Street at the Shell station on a cash basis. He had credit cards from two companies, Tidewater Associated and Standard Oil Company. His bills at Standard Oil Company were running around $1.82 to $1.83 a month. One at Tidewater Associated around $28, $29 to $30, which indicated he bought more flying A gas than he did the other. The man at the Shell station out there couldn't tell us when he got gas there the last time. He's in and out from time to time, apparently a friend, a neighborhood man there. Going into his background on his mental stability, from every angle we can find out, he was connected with PGE for a good many years. At the time the Portland General Electric Company discontinued their service, or their sales and service of appliances such as ranges and toasters, waffle irons, and that stuff, was a gentleman from the PGE company who was a personal friend of his that set up the Home Electric Company. And at that time, Mr. Martin bought 5 shares of it, paid at $100 a share, which he later sold back to the man that originally started it, who was on a leave from the Portland General Electric and is now back with them. At the time that the Home Electric Company was bought out by the Eccles Electric Company, the other 2 men that were there, I think had a share or 2 of stock in it, pulled away and went on their own, went to work for somebody else. Martin went to work for Eccles. And in talking to Mr. Eccles, as far as we know, perfectly substantial, there's nothing wrong with him mentally or physically. Didn't seem to have any worries. He has a substantial savings account, a substantial checking account. The last check that he drew was at the Seba Market for groceries out there. What amount was that in, Howard?
Last one was $16.
$16 for groceries at the Seba Market. That was prior to December the 7th. There's been no checks come back into the bank since, and the only gasoline credit card that has showed up for gas purchase was the one from Standard Oil Company. And we have checked with Tidewater Associated, but they haven't come up with anything yet. They're in Los Angeles where those tickets go, and it might be 6 weeks before they get in there. So, in talking to close friends of his, mentally, very stable, and very methodical, and very meticulous all the way around, and quite prominent in school activities, large activities, and his business activity, and was very satisfied and happy where he was. That's the best we can tell you on his background. There's no, as near as we can find out, there's no despondency there at all. We did have a report that some 25 years ago there was an attempt to commit suicide. We checked that out with close friends of his that have known him over a longer period of time than that, and they said it made them sick of their stomach to even hear about it because it never happened, that he wasn't that type of fellow. That's about as much as I can tell you in his personal background.
Agencies from 9 counties in 2 states, and with the help of hundreds of volunteers, the search has led back to the same question asked that first days. You've met the Martins' relatives and friends who knew them well, the lawmen who were directing the search. Some of your doubts have been answered and some new questions raised. And the new questions are just like the old one. Where are the Martins?
Well, that was a little different, but you know, it's kind of interesting to see how investigations and media worked back then. Whole nother world. And for those of you who are not old enough to remember, that's the way it was back then. All right. This is an interesting case. Any way about it, this might be part 1 of this case for us. I wanted to bring it to your attention. I kind of want to build on this more. I want to keep going. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like and subscribe on your way